Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from, and welcome to another one of our Kneat webinars. Sorry if we're starting on the wrong side there. My name is James Carey. I'm the digital marketing events manager here for Kneat Solutions, and I'm the host of today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. I know we had some mix-up with the time a little bit earlier today, so if you're joining us for a second time this morning, thank you for coming back and watching our presentation here. Today's presentation is a partner presentation brought to us by our partners at MMR Consulting. Kneat and MMR have been partners for years now. We value our relationship. We've worked with them many times, sponsoring the State of Validation annual report and survey. We've seen them at Validate giving various speeches. We've seen them on our webinars presenting different presentations, partner presentations as well. And today we're happy to be talking about how to supercharge your C&Q, specifically with API integrations using Kneat solutions, or Kneat GX rather. And we have an expert from Kneat as well that will be joining us to talk about those API integrations. But first, before we get into that, want to give you a little bit of lay of the land if this is your first time joining us on a webinar. There are a few different ways you'll be able to engage with us today. The primary one of those being our chat box. To the right-hand side of your video, you should be able to see that chat box. I've already put a message in there welcoming you, letting you know you should tell us who you are. Introduce yourself. Where are you from? Who do you work with? What is your job? What is your experience with digital validation, API integration, and C&Q in general? That chat box is where you can put your comments throughout the presentation. Let us know what you think about what the speakers are talking about, your experience with API and all of that. But if you have a question, best not to put it in that Q&A or in that chat box. Save that for the Q&A box. There, right next to that chat is a Q&A option. Put your questions in there. That way they won't be lost in the chat if there's chatting and talking going on. But we can answer all of your questions live at the end of the presentation. We'll take as much time as we need and answer as many questions as we can. Any questions that we don't get to, we'll be sure to follow up afterwards in an email, a personalized email from one of our speakers or experts at Kneat to make sure that you get the answers that you need. Now, the most frequently asked question, and I know I'll repeat this a few times as people join, but you will be getting this recording and our slides in an email afterwards. So be on the lookout in the next couple days, maybe early next week, to get the recording of this, to be able to share, to be able to reference back, and to be able to see the slides so that you can always refer back to this or share it with your colleagues. Then finally, we have a welcome poll or an engagement poll that is currently running. If you click that polling tab, you'll be able to answer it already. For you to let us know where you are on your journey to digitizing validation. This just helps us be able to tailor a little bit of today's content to know where you are in your journey, what level of digital validation are you at, and what experience might be relevant to you. So I've already gone through a few of these things on our agenda here, but starting off with our welcome, we'll do that audience poll. I'll talk a little bit about Kneat Solutions as a company, Kneat GX as a product in our validation platform. Then we'll go into our featured presentation, talking about API integrations and how to supercharge your C&Q. And then, as I mentioned, our live Q&A at the end. So stick with us for that. This is going to be about an hour-long presentation, all said and done. So first, I want to start off with our poll here. If you haven't already, click into that polling tab. Let us know where you are on your journey to digitizing your validation. Are you starting today with today's webinar? Are you in your initial discovery? You've got some prep work done, some discussions done with folks at your organization or your company, but you haven't quite launched yet. Maybe you're about to launch your first digital validation project. You've done your research. You've put a plan into place. You've launched that project, or you're just about to, or you've maybe got one going already. So you've dipped your toe in and you know what you're doing. Or maybe finally, D, here you've got multiple projects being delivered digitally and you're considering how to scale. Maybe you have operations or facilities across your region, your country, the globe, and you're considering how to scale and bring this digital validation into more projects. Let us know where you are in that process. I'm going to leave this poll open. We've got a few responses here on letter C, about to launch their first digital validation project. But I'm going to leave that open to let people keep answering that as we come in. We'll come to this a little bit later. I know some people lag behind a little bit or join a little bit late. First, I want to talk about Kneat as a company and Kneat GX, more importantly, as our validation life cycle management platform of choice. So Kneat GX is just that. It's a software as a service. It provides digital validation solutions to companies in a wide range of industries. It is one platform for any process that you have, as long as you need to validate your equipment lifecycle, your manufacturing process, anything like that. It enables regulated companies to make their validation easier, faster, and smarter by eliminating 100% of the challenges of paper validation from the past. And that's not just what we tout, it's what our customers and our partners show. Kneat GX is the platform of choice for 8 of the world's top 10 pharma companies around the world. And that includes 3 of the 4 COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers. And these are just a few reasons of why. Like I mentioned before, it's one platform for any work process. It's easy to use, easy to train, easy to scale across multiple facilities or however big your organization is. And it allows you as a regulated company to be audit ready at any time by keeping all of your validation information in one place that can be accessed by any device with an internet connection. So there's no more hunting through warehouses and storage for reams and reams of paper in binders to try to find one specific wet signature. Everything is available at the touch of a screen. Now, that is Kneat GX. That is the foundation of what we'll be talking about today through that context of digital validation. And here to talk about how you can supercharge your C&Q with API integrations into Kneat GX, we're going to be joined by Aaron Roth, Director of Project Services at MMR Consulting. Aaron has joined Kneat for several different webinars in the past. He is a great speaker and a great presenter. We're happy to have him here joining us to lead the presentation. And from Kneat's side, Denis Bartley is a senior integrations engineer. He is new to the webinars, but has a wealth of information on the topic of API integrations. We're happy to have someone here who can dive a lot more into the technical aspects. So this might be a lot more of a technical discussion here, but again, we'll try to vary the experiences here. I will let them give a little bit more of their background, their credentials, and their biographies. But safe to say, we're happy to have Aaron and Denis here for our presentation today. So, gentlemen, take it away.
All right. Thanks, James. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us this morning. I am Aaron Roth with MMR Consulting. I have been in the pharmaceutical industry doing various dimensions of commissioning, qualification, validation for the last almost 14 years. Before that, I was a Navy submarine nuclear officer and spent some time underwater. And it was an interesting transition to find that a lot of what we do in pharmaceuticals is very much like what we do in nuclear power. It's a regulated industry. There's a lot of stainless steel and high pressure, high purity water systems. So it was an interesting but fairly smooth transition. And I've been building facilities and also in the latter maybe 6 to 7 years of my career, I've been doing a lot of work, many times with Kneat, sometimes without, but building new commissioning, qualification, validation programs and sort of bringing the industry forward to the next way of thinking about how we do that work. So that's me. Dennis?
Yes, Aaron. Hi everyone. My name is Denis Bartley. Thanks for joining today, and thanks for the introduction as well, James. I'm a senior integration engineer here with Kneat. I have a background pretty much in software development and integrations over the last 10 years. I've worked previously with a security company, so I can also see a lot of the validation and reference with security as well here. Mainly based out of the Netherlands and moved back to Ireland recently. So yeah, I've been very excited working with Kneat. I guess my role here internally is I work a lot with our APIs, pretty much working with the roadmap and pretty much how to integrate different systems into Kneat using APIs. I usually work pretty much them. And yeah, it's great to see you all. Thanks, Aaron. Take it over.
All right. So I'm going to kick us off quickly with just an overview of what an API means. All right. So API stands for Application Programming Interfaces. So to explain this, let's talk through a simple example of an online food ordering system. So this would be something like your Melio or what is it? Uber Eats, right? These are applications where you go on your phone and you find something to eat, and this is all managed through APIs. The information and activities that central app that's on your phone is handling is actually being performed by many other applications in different locations, different businesses. And so the API is a way to make one computer program talk to another computer program across the internet generally, and exchange data, exchange commands to make a business process happen more fluidly. So in this example, you have the app on your phone. That's your online food ordering system. The first thing you do is you want to find the restaurants. So there's a restaurant finder API, and it goes out to some database that exists on another software platform, probably Yelp or similar, and the API goes and pulls that based on the information that you provide it, and gives you the list of restaurants and their menus, and you have your options available. So on your online food ordering system app, you would then select the restaurant that you want and the food that you want, and you submit your order. The next thing that happens is payment, right? Well, payment is handled by another entity, generally a credit card company or an intermediary who's going to process that payment. And so the API sends the order information to the payment gateway API, and then that API works with this other third-party software to process your credit card payment, and then sends a confirmation back to your online food ordering system saying that the payment has been completed, and it confirms that, right? So now your online food ordering system can send the order that you've just paid for back out to the restaurant that you selected. So the restaurant is going to have their own internal system. And so the restaurant receives the order and starts making it, and then feeds information generally to yet another third party or fourth party application to track the creation of that order and the delivery of that order. And that fourth party is going to go through a delivery tracker API and send the information on your delivery back to the app on your phone. And so this is an example where you have the ability to perform a very complex business process all from one application. And that's kind of where we want to go with APIs in digital validation. There are a lot of things that happen external to Kneat. And fortunately, Kneat has been built with the idea that data from other places can very much play a role in how we do the work of CQV. So I'm going to hand it over to Denis, and he's going to talk a little bit about what Kneat has done and can do with APIs.
Sure. Thanks, Aaron. So here, I guess, I want to cover why integrate Kneat with other applications? Well, I guess first of all, the Kneat platform offers a dynamic data sharing platform. Really, how is that achieved? We enable APIs, sort of RESTful APIs that allow you to send and retrieve the data when you need it. What does that really mean is you can send a request to an API and it will retrieve the data from the system as it is in the system at that moment. By using this, you can reduce manual labor and increase productivity. How is this achieved? If there's a manual task that's maybe quite repetitive or takes quite a bit of time, by automating this, by using the API, you can speed up that process as well. So also, these can act as the single source of truth. So this means really when you're making that API call, you're retrieving that data from these. So it can act as the source of truth as the data is in the system at that moment when you make that request. Also, we have a robust system for data sharing. This essentially is about the APIs and how you can connect to maybe other systems that have APIs or maybe other third-party systems. So generally, when you build a system like this, you would first start off with a data mapping process where you can look at the API documentation and you can understand that the data that's coming out, how it looks, what's in there, and how does that map to your third-party system. By setting up a mapping, you can then send and also retrieve information to either platform. By doing this, it will also pretty much reduce any hassles of downloading, printing, scanning, uploading, which Kneat does as well. And it also allows for that automation to kind of avoid any data integrity issues. Also, it can enhance project management. With this, you could, for instance, if we have documents that are going through different statuses, different processes in the system, you can monitor these through the API. So you can get a snapshot of what's going on in the system at that moment. By doing this, you can retrieve the data and then you can get a real-time sense of what's going on, what has been improved, if there's something waiting. And from there, then you can trigger certain actions afterward. So here are just some examples of the applications that have been integrated with Kneat. So first is the IDA, the construction management platform. Aaron has some following up slides from here that we'll go into in far more detail. Also, I'm going to speak a bit about Jira, how we've integrated with that. So Jira is very much an agile platform. It can be used for development. What we've seen is that you can store your requirements within Jira. And from there, build out an integration by storing your requirements in Jira. You can actually send them across to Kneat. They can be sent across as entities, and also from there you can do the reverse. So you can actually retrieve entity data from Kneat and send it into Jira. So you can even create tickets with the requirements in there based on what's in Kneat. Also, we've integrated with Power BI with metadata integration. So this is about monitoring the API endpoints and retrieving that data, and then retrieving certain data that could be quite useful. I guess in one of my examples is the documents when you see it going through different statuses. This can be then sent to Power BI, and all that data can be processed and then visualized through graphs and visualize different data elements. Also, a document management system. The APIs allow you to also download a document. So with my example of the approval, if a document was going to approval and you needed in a certain document management system, you can trigger an activity to download that in a PDF, and we'll retrieve that document and you can place it into a third-party system to be used. Also around asset management. So for instance, different ERP systems such as SAP, this can be used to, when you add a asset to SAP, you can hit the add button, and from there you can trigger an event with the API to create that in Kneat. So then you will pretty much enter the asset within SAP, and when you hit the send button, you can also send it across. So this will allow you then to, as you're updating different assets within SAP, you can also update them within Kneat as well. This can be all achieved through the API. Also, user management. So user management, a typical use for this could be something about Active Directory. So where you store all your users. If you add a new user, you can trigger an event to then make a call to the Kneat platform to create that user as well through an automated process. So it's pretty much from one click, and you can trigger the action all the way to the Kneat platform. And yeah, I'll hand it back over to you, Aaron. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dennis. So as Dennis mentioned, IDA is a software that MMR has basically entered into a case study. It's ongoing to some extent, but we've got through a proof of concept to really handle turnover package management. Now, so IDA, if you're not familiar, is a construction management platform. It's used to handle a lot of documentation that we routinely have to reference or use directly within the commissioning, qualification, and validation process. And often the management of that documentation is frequently a pain point on the delivery of large projects. This is documentation that is provided by a variety of vendors. Often the construction manager or general contractor is expected to be something of a clearinghouse for all that documentation as it comes in. Some of it is generated by the construction manager and their team themselves. Some of it is provided by trades. Some of it is provided by equipment vendors, integrators, you name it. Pretty much everybody involved in the project is providing lots and lots of different types of information that often winds up in a variety of locations and in a fairly disorganized state. Frequently, a commissioning qualification team comes into the project and is expected to find all of that and do verifications based on it. So we at MMR have postulated, well, what if the software that was being used to create and manage that documentation by the construction manager, IDA being one common example, what if that software had a direct link to Kneat, where we were going to do our commission qualification validation work? And what if we could essentially push that information directly in its native format? So that's kind of the entering thought process where we came into this. And so we've worked closely with IDA over the past couple of months and really kind of refined our understanding of the data architecture between the two platforms to the point where we have a proof of concept and we have the ability to build on that proof of concept to do more. So what you'll see here in a minute is a very short demo of that proof of concept where we're going to operate as a user within IDA and selecting all of the completed handover documentation for a given system, and we're going to push that into Kneat. Okay, so why don't we show that video? Okay, so you can see here, this is the user interface for IDA. The user is going to the system in question and selecting a set of consolidated handover documentation. So that's a function of the IDA platform. Okay, the user is going to make their selection and then create that as a file entity within Kneat. Okay, or actually, in this example, it's a drawing entity. Our proof of concept can do either a file entity or a drawing entity, and you can see the user navigating a series of folders. Those are actually the Kneat folder locations that are available in the workspace that was selected. And so the user is navigating to the appropriate place, entering the relevant metadata. This is in IDA, and this information, along with the content that was selected, is going to be pushed directly into Kneat. And what's happening in the background now, you see the little spinny, and when that completes, it'll say, successfully completed. What's happening is it's actually generating a new file entity, or drawing entity rather, in Kneat in the location that was selected. Okay, so I'm going to advance the slide, and you can see just a couple of details. So first and foremost, I think it's pretty interesting and powerful to note that the API is a true real-time collection of real-time data, and we can navigate the Kneat environment directly from another software interface, okay, in this case IDA, and we can go and find the folder location that's specific to what we want to put in. So if we understand the system nomenclature and kind of hierarchy of how we're doing the project on the one side, all we have to do is find that location and push it. Okay. And then you can see here, this is now back in the Kneat environment, going to the same location, and we can see that the file entity that was pushed has now been created within Kneat. All right. The other interesting aspect is that we're entering metadata in the IDA user interface, including drop-down menus. So in this particular example, we were selecting the discipline associated with that entity. That was a pretty straightforward thing to be able to find that list of available disciplines within the selected Kneat environment and populate that directly in the IDA user interface so that you can select this metadata appropriately. Now, again, this is a proof of concept that is pretty basic, but it illustrates a lot of power. Now, what we've learned is that and this is not new, but the better you understand the business process, then the better and more powerful you can make the API. Now in this particular example, most of the time to develop this proof of concept was spent really just understanding the data architecture between the two platforms by the software developers. Now, once they have that, and once they have the basic handshaking figured out, it's relatively straightforward to capitalize on this proof of concept and do more. So we're looking down the road to expand this to essentially define, if I can define the handover business process more completely, then I can kind of pre-select certain sets of information to do this in batches. All right, where I create multiple file entities, with a single click of a button. We're looking at if I can harmonize and really understand the system and equipment numbering scheme between the two applications, then I can have some things happen really automatically without even having to manually go and find those locations, right? So, looking at some best practices that we've identified as we've come through this, we really want to focus on cross-platform business process alignment. Okay, the more that you can do to align the business process along those touch points, then the more power you can get out of an API, and the return on investment it goes up pretty steeply once you come through that initial development phase. Okay, so that's where we are with IDA now. We've identified that if I can understand the workspace folder structure in Kneat and manage kind of a system hierarchy within IDA that aligns to that, then it makes a straightforward way to compartmentalize information and then push it to the appropriate location. Kneat is essentially a user within IDA. We can use Kneat to pull information out of IDA, and you can use the same system nomenclature as in Kneat. We define a separate a separate section for documents that are ready to be uploaded. So one of the main issues that we were trying to solve with this API was making sure that when we push handover information, it's in fact the final handover content or the final version. Version management within the construction manager process is often one of those things that causes pain on the C&Q side, because we're never fully sure that what we got was the final one. So we've solved that problem here. We pre-mapped the file and drawing pathway. So this was along the lines of what Denis was saying with kind of that first exercise is the data mapping. And there's kind of multiple layers to that, right? We want to understand the data architecture on a kind of a bit by bit level. What format is this particular data element in when it goes in? But we also want to understand it at a higher level of okay, do I want all the drawings? Do I want just GA drawings? Do I want just P&IDs? And how are those parsed within the one platform? And how we're going to parse them in the other platform. So lining up the business processes at that border between the two, which is the API, is kind of a critical step. Okay, and then finally, once we've gotten through that, what we found is that we can expand on this in fairly short order. So, I mentioned it was a few months to kind of get our heads around the data architecture between the two, and also understand the business process. But we kind of approach it from the perspective that as a consulting firm, the customer is always providing the business process, right? So we had to approach it from the perspective of, what is a business process that is going to be fairly universally applicable. So that's why we have a proof of concept that it's still fairly user intensive to select the subset of information that I'm going to push, and then select the location where it's going to reside in Kneat. But again, once you have a specific business process that's determined by your customer, then you can capitalize on that baseline and get a real economy of scale out of this. So, what we found is that once we had that initial architecture mapped out, it really only takes a couple of weeks to then make adjustments or expand that use case, and do some basic commissioning on it to have a functional API in an expanded state. So, one of the key elements to that is understanding that IDA is a construction manager's tool. It's not a validated GXP platform, and that's okay, right? This is engineering information that we are referencing, and when you pull it into Kneat, Kneat creates the validated record, okay? So that allows us to make updates to the API, or even to the data architecture within our instance of IDA, that facilitate our ability to streamline and harmonize those business processes. So if you think about it, whereas in the past it might have been a prohibitive suggestion to say, hey, well, I want to develop an API to connect these two softwares on my project, that might have been a 6-month delay to the ability to do any value-adding work on the project. But if we can compress that time frame because we've got a basis to start from, then it doesn't need to be a prohibitive suggestion anymore. It can be a real discussion, and a relatively small investment for any project of a decent size to say, well, this might actually help us out. So it's proven, and we're going to start expanding that use case as we go out. So that is the case study. I want to hand it back to Denis to talk about, well, what could the potential impact be to the validated side, to what happens in Kneat.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, and to speak about the project as well, it just shows really the power of the APIs, what's really possible and how flexible they can be to really enable these kind of automation tasks. So around the validation stage, Kneat, it does provide the APIs. So these are RESTful APIs. These are kind of based on an open standard. It's really about the architecture of how you design an API. So we follow that very strictly so that it's easier for teams to come in and integrate against these as well. So Kneat also does not allow for deletion or modification of the internal data, approved data. So this means, once the data is approved, it's pretty much locked in. You cannot change it via the API gateway. IDA is commissioned, not validated, and essentially acting as an end user. So, once they have the validated user to trigger the APIs, they're essentially acting as that end user and triggering certain events. And for the content imported from IDA, it must always go through the relevant review and approval workflow in Kneat. So it's pretty much how Kneat works as you go through the review and approval process within Kneat itself. And see, next, I just speak about maybe just in general best practices when it comes to integrating. So we have authentication on our system. So you can authenticate with different OAuth authentication methods. So for instance, API keys. So one of the recommendations we give is that the API keys should be all stored securely through a secure token so that it's locked away, that this key is kind of hidden away from the actual application itself when the code is written. Also, there's a limit for token permission, so you could actually limit the access for a certain API token. So that means that if you want to read only to a certain folder, you can also enable that and allow that to just be available in one portion of your workspace. For scalability and performance, we use pagination where possible, so we've enabled it. So what really pagination means is that when you have a large data set that you're trying to pull out of the API, by using pagination, you can pretty much take it out in different pages and kind of iterate through each set of data. So it does it means that you kind of you get the data as quick as possible, so it will not slow down, and you can retrieve it. Also utilize caching. So for instance, certain endpoints that may not change the data very often, you can cache that data so that the data would always have to come directly back, so you reduce your API calls. We also have a lot of reference documentation around the APIs. So API documentation is pretty much the explanation of what is available in the APIs, how does it work, examples, what does it really mean, what do each parameter mean. So these are all listed out within the API documentation. We also have Swagger docs. So Swagger documentation is more of an interactive document. So it allows you to set up your authentication within Swagger, and you will have a list of all the APIs that are available on your instance. With this, you can actually hit your instance. So if you have a test instance, you can actually make requests to it and actually see the data in real time. And it's very useful, I think, for developers to really kind of get their hands on with the system without really getting too deep into code. They can really just look through the documentation and get a feel for how that system will work. And also, we also have the API fair use policy, which just has information around API calls and any information there. So as well, we have some improvements that are coming along the line. So around automation, we're always expanding the use cases within Kneat. So for instance, if an API needs to trigger a certain action, we're always looking at expanding the support there to make sure that we cover as many actions as we can within the Kneat platform to enable the APIs. Also, we're on the roadmap, we're looking at allowing for data entry during test execution. So while you're executing a test, that you can actually send data through the API and through the system to update it there. That's coming in a more recent release is also a data stream. The data stream is essentially Parquet files, which are large data set files that contain Kneat data. What this really looks like is maybe if you see reports, it's quite a lot of that data that's in the reports that you can retrieve in bulk. So this is all through the API, so you can trigger an event to a scheduled event to retrieve this data, see what is available, and also download it. The great thing about Parquet files is that you can integrate this then into other platforms such as Power BI, Snowflake, Databricks. So lots of other systems that you can just really push that data into, visualize it, or even run through it to build a data lake. Also, this really helps reducing manual effort by automation through the API. Instead of actually downloading a report and feeding it into a system, now you can actually trigger it through the API and retrieve that data. And I think this is it for me. I guess I hand it to James.
Excellent. Thank you both so much for just an insightful presentation into API integrations. I can tell already that it has been interesting to the audience as well. We have a few questions coming up. I'm going to start with those in the Q&A box, but I'll get to as many as I can. So the first one from Jamie here, you used IDA as the example. Can a similar API be done with other common systems like Procore? Aaron, I'll go to you first on this one.
Yeah, absolutely, you can. I think we selected IDA for reasons, and I think those reasons are relevant to anybody who might be considering such a decision. And quite simply, IDA is a smaller company, right? The people who developed the API in our case study were software engineers from IDA, the software company. So it's we picked them in large part because it's a good platform and we've used it on several projects and it works. But more to the point, they had the appetite to engage with us and help develop this, right? So I think that if you were going to try to approach a company like Procore, it might be a slightly different conversation where perhaps they're dealing with a broader user base, and some of what we did in terms of building out our proof of concept involved tweaks to the IDA database structure for kind of our test environment, which is not not unusual for that particular software platform in the sense that you're going to make those kinds of tweaks when you set up a new project anyway. But it was I guess the point is that was a fairly flexible use case to be able to build that API. For something like Procore, absolutely you can do it. You just might have to find a software engineer from somewhere else to build that connection. Dennis, do you have
Excellent.
any further insight on
Yeah.
that one?
Yeah, no, it's a great answer and great question as well. I think it really does boil down to this as well. And also, it's just about understanding your use case, because we do find that even when you do build out an integration for a specific product, that you can always kind of take some of what you've used there and use it again then in another integration, because a certain amount of endpoints that you have, may reuse in a different integration as well. So there's always going to be that learning lesson where you could take what you've learned from one integration, maybe a few adjustments, as you mentioned as well, on the product side, the third party side as well, and then reapply that.
Okay.
Good question.
Excellent. Thank you for the answers, and thank you for that question, Jamie. Here is another one from Jamie. Do you need to validate the API used to pull the documents, or is it considered outside the validation bubble because everything is approved within Kneat? Denis, I'll go over to you first on that one.
Yeah, so I guess what we've seen as well with the IDA one, for example, is that the API, the authenticated user, acts as an end user. So you're triggering different actions, which is quite essentially quite similar to a person clicking within the system. So by sending this across, you can send the data through. Now it will be validated and approved within the Kneat platform itself. But I think really with the integration as well, you can really see it as maybe more of a end user or something quite similar sending that data through.
Yeah, I think the question fundamentally depends on how the customer, the end user customer for Kneat, has decided to validate Kneat, right? Some customers choose to validate Kneat as, kind of a baseline platform where they're validating the fact that an electronic signature in Kneat is an electronic signature, and that's by and large the extent of their validation. Whereas other customers, other end users of Kneat validate their Kneat instance to actually drive business processes in a more traditional CSV style approach. And in that case, there might be some impact. So it will be case dependent.
Okay, thank you for those answers. We keep getting more and more coming in. This is great. Next one is from Stephanie. What is involved in the configuration and integration of the API? Give us an idea of the costs, resources, timings. Aaron, what have you seen as far as the resources involved?
Yeah, so we had a couple of software engineers from IDA who were supporting us, and then Denis, I believe, was helping us out on the Kneat side. For this particular API, the level of Kneat involvement was relatively low because, again, we were essentially acting as an end user and using API, existing API gates that were already available to us within Kneat. Without really trying to modify those, and it was more around the IDA team, kind of figuring out how to make their code talk to the Kneat API interface. That it was a couple of those folks. I said it took maybe 3-ish months to get to the point of, okay, now we understand it well enough to have a proof of concept. That certainly wasn't full time. It certainly wasn't full time on MMR's part. I would say, if you were starting from scratch, as we did, then you might be looking at a certainly not a trivial cost, but trivial in comparison to any large capital project. So, it's on the order of tens of thousands of dollars, to get something working. And then I think more poignantly, if you're not starting from scratch, if we have something to capitalize on, then it could be a much even more palatable investment to get something that's usable into the field. I hope that answers the question.
I think so. And Denis, do you have any involvement from your side on what the
Mm,
cost, resource, timings might be for another organization integrating these APIs?
sure. It really depends on the use case as well and kind of what you're trying to achieve because depends sometimes can be it can be very complex. All depends. I think one of the examples I give is like a user management. That could be something that may rely on 2 to 3 API calls to achieve what you want to achieve. But then, you could go into something far more complex as well, and that can grow and it will cost more in resources and timing. So it really depends on what you want to achieve. But generally, what I've seen is, you can start small and then build out from there, building on what you've learned and how to use that platform as well.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for those answers. Um, Next up, a question from Felix. You mentioned APIs to external document management systems. Does the owner of the systems, Kneat, and the document management system need to be the same organization? Uh, I might be getting a little confused on this one, but hopefully you guys aren't. Dennis, I'll go to you first on this one.
Yeah, I know for this it could be an internal system, like an internal document system where you can move maybe an approved document in a PDF format out to the system as well. So in this case it would be internal to the actual company. Yeah, I think hopefully that answers your question. I don't know, Aaron, if you have any.
Well, I mean, the, so for our proof of concept, the intended use case is an instance where they are separate organizations. I mean, you have a construction manager firm who is bringing in IDA as their tool of choice to deliver a project, and you have a pharma company that has selected Kneat as their tool of choice to do CQV. And so I think by and large, the kind of the underlying intent of an API is to be able to bridge the gaps between different software platforms, which inherently may have different ownership. Obviously, in any arrangement of building such an API, you need to consider privacy of customer information and make sure that you're not building an API that accidentally tunnels into some other customer's set of data, and you could have a mixing effect there. In the case of Kneat, where you have an instance, right, that's generally owned by one company, and that's protected, right? So I would only be connecting the API to one instance of Kneat. Obviously I can take that code and plug it into a different instance of Kneat, but that would that won't just happen by itself, right? Somebody would have to make a conscious decision to do that. And IDA is similarly structured, where there's a silo of information that is inherent to this particular user. However, if it's a construction manager firm, and they have more than one customer in their instance of IDA, so to speak, then we need to make sure we draw the appropriate lines, and that was certainly part of the initial data mapping that we did to build our API. Does that answer the question?
I think so. I think that gives a bit more insight into it. Felix, go ahead and respond if it didn't fully answer it and you need some more context on that one. But I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one. We've got about 10 minutes here. Stephanie asks another question. Can data be pulled from an asset management system to populate entity templates in Kneat? Dennis, I'm going to start with you on this one again.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yes, you can update entities pretty much with the API. We have a set of APIs that can allow you to create new entities as well as update. So from there, you can retrieve the information from your external system and just send it through with the API. Also, in reverse, you can retrieve that information as well if it has been updated on the Kneat side, and then send it back into that system. But
Excellent. Aaron, anything to add on that one?
Nope, that one's pretty straightforward.
Seemed pretty straightforward, but I wanted you to get a hand on the ball in case you had anything to add. All right, our last question here, and we'll be just at about time unless one more comes in. We may be able to fit one or two more after this. Felix asked, will Kneat enable supplier system links for FAT/SAT documents and approvals? This is a bit out of my wheelhouse. Aaron, I'll ask you to start on this one. not quite sure who this is appropriate for.
I'm not entirely sure I understand the question. Um, it, I wonder if this is something maybe Dennis might be able more. If there's something maybe in the backlog and something might have been alluded to in some of the previews of future releases. But I mean, it sounds like essentially we're saying can we connect to a vendor's platform where they disposition the vendor protocols and use Kneat to provide the electronic signature as opposed to doing something like push it through a submittal in something like Procore, if I'm understanding the correct question correctly. Dennis, do you have
And
any thoughts on that?
I can't say I'm not too sure about the question on
Yeah.
this one. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like essentially the question is, can an API be used to apply a Kneat electronic signature somewhere else outside of Kneat?
Mhm. Right now, that isn't something we have on the API at the moment, but if it is something that you're interested in, if you have CSM, get in contact, and we can always get that assessed by the product team as well and get it on the roadmap.
Let us know if we misinterpreted that question completely.
Yeah. Well, here is another one from Felix. I don't think it's related, but is Kneat planning to enable direct integration between supplier Kneat instances and customer Kneat instances? Dennis, since this is with planning, I'll go to you first on this one.
Yeah, we are looking at it at the moment. I guess, the connection between both Neat instances, they would use, the same API. So the possibility is there. Really, it's just about designing and utilizing the APIs that are already there. So it is something we kind of look at, but it is something that's also possible with the APIs that are currently there, I would say.
And Aaron, anything to add on? Well, you don't know what needs planning, perhaps, but
I don't. I mean, I've been involved in some of our future use case conversations, and I know that it's kind of the vision of Kneat to be able to have this, the data is everywhere, right? And so a vendor, in some point in the future, a lot of the equipment qualification record may reside entirely within the vendor's instance of Kneat, but in that future state. My understanding of Kneat's vision is that it's not even necessarily limited by instance. I mean, this is the idea is that information is residing and maintained by the appropriate parties, and it's really just connections as opposed to duplication of information across instances, so to speak.
right. Yeah, that all makes sense. So we have exhausted the questions that have been submitted here, and anything in the chat, and we are right on time to end out our webinar. So I want to thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Dennis, both for joining us on this. This was a lot of information to go through, but hopefully helpful to our audience here. I know when we see questions of that caliber and that quantity, I know it's got to be something that is interesting to folks. So for those who joined us maybe after my introductions in the beginning, I'll repeat here. Keep an eye on your inbox in the next couple days or early next week at the latest. You will receive a follow-up email just for registering that includes a link to this recording with the full presentation and the questions, as well as the slide deck for your reference to be able to share within your company and your organization. You'll be able to find this on demand again on our website, along with all of our other case studies, webinars, articles, blog posts, all of that on Kneat.com. And I'll encourage you to browse around while you're there. Look at all of our different case studies. You'll be able to sort by the industry or project type that you're interested in, so you'll be able to find more C&Q information on there. And if our questions didn't give you a full idea of what you were looking for today, feel free to always reach out to us at info@kneat.com. That's info@kneat.com for more information. You'll be connected directly with a Kneat representative who will be able to answer all of your questions. We can set up a demo or talk to one of our product experts who will be able to answer your questions more in depth and personally there. And finally, I want to encourage all of you to follow us on social media, follow MMR on social media as well. Check out their website for how they are helping their clients with digital validation and using Kneat. On LinkedIn and X, we are Kneat Solutions. You'll be able to find all of our information about upcoming events, both physical around North America and Europe, and all of our virtual events coming up as well. If you want more information, we have monthly Kneat GX demos, as well as thought leadership and insight webinars, such as these ones featuring our partners and our internal SMEs. So once again, I'm James Carey with Kneat Solutions. A big thank you to Aaron and Dennis for joining us, for MMR, for being such a beloved partner of Kneat, and of course, for you, our audience, joining us today. We hope to see you again on another Kneat webinar in the future. Take care, everyone.